show brought to you by WP Relax. No matter whether you have an existing site, want to transfer your site, or need to start a WordPress site from scratch, we have a plan to suit your needs. So say bye-bye to WordPress problems and relax with WP Relax.
Hi everyone, this is Ahmed Karimli and welcome to Be Efficient TV. The mission of this web TV show is to boost the efficiency of your business and life through tips and tricks from leading experts. And today I have with me Nirs Eyal. He is a business strategist and he's an expert in behavioral design and the psychology of habits. He's also the best-selling author of Hooked, and he's a regular frequent contributor for Forbes, TechCrunch, and Psychology Today. Welcome to the show, Nir.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure. So how did you become an author and what's your background before that?
Yeah, so I was in my last company, I was at the intersection of gaming and advertising. So we were placing ads inside these games back in 2008, 2009 when the Facebook platform first opened up. And I was spending a lot of time seeing these different methods used to persuade people. You know, advertisers spend billions of dollars to get people to buy products. Games are built to change user behavior within those games. And so I picked up a lot of these tactics, these techniques to change people's behavior. And after that company was acquired, I wanted to figure out how I could use these same techniques for building things that could help improve people's lives and help people live happier, healthier, richer, more connected lives by using the psychology of consumer psychology to help people live better. And so that's when I really started diving into habits to try and figure out what were the basis of how people form habits and how products can change people's behaviors by using the psychology of designing for habits.
What's some of the other startups that you have built and you've been involved in?
So now I'm working as a consultant. I was going to build another company, but then I decided that I could have a lot more fun doing research and writing about how lots of different companies use the psychology of habits. And so that's what I've been working on for the past 3 years now, is writing this book, Hooked, as well as working with various companies. Now, some of the companies that I've worked with actually have originally started by reading the book and figuring out the hook model that I describe in the book. Some notable companies are Producthunt, which is actually a company that was started by the editor of my book. Ryan Hoover is the CEO of Producthunt. They're doing unbelievably well. They just raised $6.2 million, I think it was, from Andreessen Horowitz. And there's several other companies that I invest in because they use the hook model for good.
And what other projects that you're currently involved in?
Yeah, so I work with several clients doing consulting work, but I mostly spend my time researching and writing about consumer psychology, and so that's the bulk of my time. Is I want to constantly be doing new work that I can share with the public on how to build better products.
Tell us more about the Nectar and Sunshine business development, those two companies.
Sure. So Nectar was this company that I described earlier that was at the intersection of gaming and advertising. I saw a lot of tactics that were used to influence consumer behavior, and so it was very important to me after that company to codify what I had learned, so that hopefully other people could use these techniques outside of gaming, outside of advertising. And so those two companies kind of put me on my feet in terms of being a practitioner. I very well know the feeling of building a product and not understanding why people aren't using it. You know, it's a very frustrating experience when you spend your years and money building a product that you think everybody should use, and for whatever reason people aren't using that product. I know how frustrating that can be. And so that's really why I wanted to write this book, Hooked, was to help other people alleviate some of that frustration, to not waste as much time and money building the wrong stuff, and so that we can spend more time building things that our consumers, our users actually want.
So how companies create these magical products that people cannot put down? Is it there is a certain formula or just like A/B testing until they reach to the final, version of that product?
Right. So the model I describe in my book is called the hook model. It's a 4-step process that goes from trigger, action, reward, and investment. And through successive cycles through these hooks, this is how customer preferences are changed, how tastes are formed, and how our habits take hold. So it's by following these 4 basic steps, and I'm happy to walk through those 4 steps with you.
Yes, please.
Through successive cycles, this is how habits are formed.
Can we dig more into details into those 4 steps?
Sure. So every hook starts with a trigger. It starts with an external trigger. An external trigger is something that tells the user what to do next with some piece of information. So click here, buy now, play this. These are all examples of external triggers. Now, the next step of the hook after the trigger is the action phase. The action phase is described as the simplest behavior done in anticipation of a reward. So it's something as simple as scrolling on Pinterest or searching on Google or opening your email app. These are all examples of the simplest behavior done in anticipation of reward. Next comes the reward itself, and it's typically a variable reward. So when we look at habit-forming products, it's not just that the customer's itch is scratched, it's that there's something uncertain about what they might find the next time they engage with the product. So these variable rewards are things in the product that are uncertain, that have some kind of intermittent reinforcement involved with them. So when you think about the fact that when you open Facebook, you're never quite sure what you're going to see, right? What pictures do people post? What comments are people posting? How many likes does something get? High degree of variability. We also see something similar in enterprise applications. When you think about Slack or GitHub or Stack Overflow, all of these products have this element of variability, this bit of the unknown, this uncertainty that keeps people coming back to see what's going on, what's new. After the variable reward phase, then we finally have the investment phase. The investment phase is where the user puts something into the product in anticipation of a future benefit. It's about not about immediate gratification, it's about a future reward. So doing something into the product which increases the likelihood of the next pass through the hook, either by loading the next trigger or storing value. So when somebody gives data to the product or builds a reputation or accrues followers, all of these are examples of investments that people put into the product to make the product better with use in anticipation of a future benefit. So that's a very, very short summary of the hook model.
So it's like when you upload a picture to Facebook and you anticipate a like in the future?
Exactly. So there's no immediate reward to uploading a photo or liking something or commenting something. There's no immediate gratification. You're doing it in anticipation of a future benefit. And of course, what that does is load the next trigger because you're likely to return to come back to see what happened to your original investment. And so through successive cycles through these hooks, by passing through trigger, action, reward, and investment again and again, eventually we don't even need those external triggers. Eventually we form associations with what's called an internal trigger. An internal trigger prompts us to action, tells us what to do next, but the information for what to do next is stored as association in the user's mind. So that's the ultimate goal of these habit-forming products, is to not even need these external triggers anymore. They don't even need to prompt us with spammy messages or notifications, because we use these products on our own, out of habit.
Those products are mainly, when I'm thinking about it now, it's like a platforms where people interact in. So can you give us an example for a product which is not a platform?
Right, so the fact that they are a platform is a very big deal, right? So communication platforms require unprompted user engagement. So that's why many of these companies that I described in the book are technology products. That happens to be what I'm most interested in. But it's not necessarily a requirement, right? If you think about what makes gambling habit forming or addictive, there's nothing social necessarily about playing a slot machine, but it has a hook, right? These gambling machines have trigger, action, reward, investment, and that's what keeps people coming back time and time again. So we can form habits with all kinds of things. I mean, if you think about spectator sports, right? Why do people go crazy over their football teams or you know, their whatever the sport might be? The people love these activities. They're hooked to them because they also have these hooks, these trigger action rewards and investments that keep us coming back. So it doesn't just have to be technology products. It doesn't have to necessarily be social products, even though those products can be highly habit forming. It can be all sorts of experiences that have these habits.
But is the personal habits, like as a human, it's built in the same way of these 4 stages, or is different? Is like in the power of habit, the author talks about different routine that you build, routine. Right. And so how the process of building a personal habits work?
It doesn't necessarily, it's not the same process because products require investments. So that crucial 4th step of the hook, the investment phase that I described in my book, that's specifically for products. There's no investment phase when it comes to personal habits.
So how can we develop a good habits as human? Like how can we force a good habit?
That's a big question. There's a lot of different methods to forming habits. The important thing is to figure out the right method for the right behavior you're trying to change. So a lot of gurus stand up and say, look, my method is the best method. You have to do this behavior for 45 days or 60 days, and then you're going to form this good habit. Well, it turns out that forming habits and changing human behavior is very complex, and it requires the right tool for the job, right? We don't use a screwdriver to paint a painting. We use a paintbrush to paint a painting, and so we have to find the right tools for the job. So the first step is to identify what type of habit you're trying to change. If it's a habit that you want to start doing versus a habit you want to stop doing, there's completely different processes. There's a completely different method for doing that. The next criteria is whether the behavior is something that requires a lot of willpower or something that requires only a little bit of willpower. So you can almost put it on a matrix, right? If you think about doing a behavior or don't doing a behavior, and then on the x-axis you can put something with low willpower or something with high willpower, you will find there are 4 different types of behaviors, and therefore there are 4 different methods to change those behaviors. So one method that's very effective for changing low willpower doing behaviors is called tiny steps. So for example, when you think about many of the tech products that we use today that we find most habit forming, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp and Snapchat, these products are all low willpower doing behaviors. And so they use many of these principles that I describe in my book to help change user habits. It's all about these small steps, these cycles through the hook, done repetitively time after time, that these habits are formed. These techniques will not work at all for stopping a behavior, for example, stopping to smoke cigarettes, or they also will not work for starting to do a behavior that requires a high degree of willpower. You can't use the techniques in my book to teach people how to play a piano, right? If that requires a lot of effort, if that requires a lot of willpower to get the notes right, this isn't the right methodology, because there are 4 different behavior change methods, because there are 4 different behavior change types.
So your method is the interaction between the product and the human or the user.
Right. Right.
How to quit bad habits? Like, can you share with us some techniques how to stop bad habits?
Right. So I've actually used the methodologies in my book to try and help stop some of my bad habits. And it comes from not following the procedures of how to start habits, which is what the book is all about, how to create habit-forming products. It's about breaking the hooks we don't want in our lives. So I'll be the first to admit that I struggle with using technology too much, right? That even I know how these techniques work, and even I struggle with using my phone, my iPhone, when I should be spending time with my family. And so what I've done is tried to figure out ways to break the hook where there's habits that aren't serving me. I think it's going to be a challenge for all of us in our generation to figure out how to put technology in its place, right? So that it's not something that kind of controls us, it's something that instead we control it. So anytime that technology interferes with areas of our life, that technology keeps us from doing the things we want to do or be the people we want to be, that's a problem. And so we have to break these hooks, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. The first thing we can do is to remove the trigger. right? These products trigger us, as I mentioned before. So if we want to stop doing these bad habits, we need to remove the triggers. So we need to take those the notification settings on our phone. We need to turn those off, right? We need to make sure that they don't interrupt us on the app maker schedule, that we use these products when we want to use them. We need to remove devices from our bedroom, right? I can't tell you what a mistake it is that 75% of Americans charge their cell phone by their nightstand, and that's a mistake. We need to put technology away so that we can get the sleep we need, so that we can spend time with the people we love, as opposed to having these triggers right next to our bedstand. We need to take technology out of the boardroom. I can't tell you how frustrating it is when I go to a meeting and somebody in the room is sitting there typing on their phone while they should be having a conversation with somebody else in the room. So these are all examples of how we need to remove the triggers. Then we need to make the action more difficult, right? So as opposed to how to create habits, we make the action easy. When we want to break habits, we need to make the action more difficult. And so there's all kinds of tools today that we can use to limit our internet use by making it more difficult to use, by increasing the barriers to using the technology. So one technique I use this app called Freedom. I use an app called Freedom to restrict what times of the day I can get on the internet, so that at least I know for certain times of the day I can do the kind of hard, concentrated writing work that I need to do and block out the internet. We need to delay the rewards. So one thing I do when it comes to the variable reward phase, we need to push those rewards till later. I use an app called Pocket. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Do you ever find yourself on the internet looking at an article, and then you see the next article, and then the next article, and the next thing, and before you know it, you've wasted an hour browsing the web when you intended just to read one article. So what we can do is we can use this app called Pocket. Instead of reading it on the web and getting sucked down this vortex of time wasting browsing the web, we can send every article to Pocket and read it later. So that would be one technique that we can use to delay the reward for later. And then finally, we don't invest. For the investment phase of the hook, we need to be very careful, particularly around products that don't have an end in sight. We need to be very careful about using these products where we don't know how long we're going to use something. You know, when we go to the grocery store and we look at how much something costs, it tells us right there what the price is. But when we use these technology products, we have no idea how much time they're going to take from our lives. And so just because something is free doesn't mean we don't pay a price. There's a reason we call it paying attention. So we have to be very careful about these products that take more and more and more time, and not invest in products that go on forever. And we have to be very careful of that. So we need to be cautious of those types of products, particularly when their business models depend on monetizing our time. So that's something we need to be careful of, not start investing in those products that go on forever, and essentially find other ways to break the hook. Sorry, that was a long answer, but that's kind of the best I could do for you there.
No worries. In regards to the reading the articles, I just added to my reading list, and I have a time scheduled once a week in my calendar that I go to my reading list to read those articles.
Very smart. Perfect. Very smart.
What else you struggle in terms of eliminating these habits, eliminating some technology? What other softwares that you use to be more efficient, more productive in that regards?
Yeah, there's a few things we can do. So if we want to remove some of these triggers that alter when we use these products, we can remove these triggers from our phones. So one thing I do is I bury the triggers. So for example, my email client, when I use Gmail, it's not on my home screen. I bury it deeper, so it's a little harder to get to, right? So the action becomes more difficult, and I don't see this trigger of the email app staring at me every time. There's another app called Forest, which kind of helps us gain clear time when we can focus on something, and then the more time we spend focused on something, we grow this little tree, we grow this little farm, and that helps us improve over time to see how we've invested in our focus time. So that's some of the different techniques out there. And now we're seeing this explosion of new products. We don't really have a name for them. I've been calling them attention retention devices. So these are all kinds of tools. Like there's the Hemming Right keyboard that is just a keyboard. So if you're the kind of person who is a blogger or a writer and you just find it too distracting to constantly see all these other things that you could be doing, like using Facebook or Twitter online, this thing only lets you write. I've also heard from college kids who tell me that when finals come out and they have to do their, they're getting ready for their finals, they have to take a big test, they'll actually change their Facebook password and give it to somebody else so that they can't log into Facebook during that important period of time when they know they should be studying. So I think it's going to be important for all of us to figure out ways to put technology in its place, kind of like you do, where you only check articles during a certain time of the week. That makes a lot of sense. I don't have a problem with these technologies. I love these technologies. I think they're terrific. We just need to make sure that we use them appropriately and we put them in their place.
What's the psychology behind why we cannot stop messaging?
Well, I think there's something that's built into our DNA of wanting to communicate. We're a very social species. We've benefited, we've evolved from being able to communicate with other people, and that's one of our great strengths as a species. So it's natural. It's not a new phenomenon, right? Facebook didn't invent the need to communicate. The phone didn't. WhatsApp messaging didn't create messaging. Messaging has been around for a very, very long time. It's something people need to do. It's social acceptance is one of the core human needs. And now these technologies have made it so much easier to do. And to be clear, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, we know that people can actually have a greater sense of well-being when they feel connected to others. So it can be very, very beneficial. Where it gets troubling is when we can't stop, right? When we find that it's taking over our lives, when we're using it in contexts when we know we shouldn't.
What are the ways to get people to do things that they don't want to do, like buying products, or this trigger to make them click on purchase and then use their credit cards as example?
Yeah, I don't know. That's not what my work focuses on. My work focuses on helping people do things they know they want to do, but because the product is too hard to use, because doing that behavior is too difficult, they can't. So I'm not an advocate for getting people to do things they don't want to do. I wouldn't even know how.
Like to purchase a game, like example, that you are marketing as an ad, using an ad to market for that game as an example.
Right, but those are things that people want to do, right? I would say that people want to buy a game because it looks fun, because it looks interesting. If it's something that they don't want to do, that's not persuasion, that's coercion, and that's not something I'd advocate for. But I think when we see products that people don't buy products because they don't want them, they buy products because they do want them, and I think it's we're giving the media too much credit to think that we're so easily manipulatable that seeing a television commercial or an ad is going to change our minds completely. These are things that we want, right? Businesses make products people want to buy, and they're trying to find ways to make them more desirable.
Maybe it's part of the emotional buying, that you motivate the client that they don't really gonna die without this product, but how you make it, how you package it, how you do the ad for it, that's what forced them to do emotionally to click and buy this product.
Right. I think it makes people more likely to do these things, and that's where marketing happens. Marketing happens at the margins of making something more likely to be purchased by a customer by improving certain qualities of the product or the customer's perception of the product, for example. So that's where the art of marketing comes in. But it all starts from building things people want.
What's the power of no?
The power of no? Tell me more. What do you mean?
I mean, I read one of the blog posts on your site talking about the power of no. How to say no that's gonna add value to you. By learning to say no is gonna add to you more, because you're not letting other people use you or use your time. It's part of the time management techniques, like the power of saying no.
I see. So I haven't written too much about that topic, but it's something I'm trying to practice. I'm trying to be more mindful about deciding what's important in my day-to-day activities versus what sounds interesting right now. So I'm trying to become less impulsive, and more mindful about the things I say I agree to and that I know are going to take up my time in the future.
Why some habits like don't last that long, and how can we make it last longer?
Yeah, so there's a lot of research that shows that the more frequently a behavior occurs, the more likely we are to do it in the future. So that's a big reason that many habits don't stick around, or I should say behaviors before they become habits, is that they're just not repeated frequently enough. So it's a behavior that occurs once a week. The definition of a habit is a behavior done with little or no conscious thought. And so when it's just something that happens very infrequently, we have to think about it. It's not something that's done unconsciously. It's something that's done with a lot of conscious thought. So frequency is a big barrier to forming habits. And then many times, because if the behavior is unpleasant, if the behavior doesn't benefit us in some way, then there's no hook formed, right? There's no reward. And so many times I see companies come to me wanting to help people by helping them lose weight, helping them make more money, right? Save for their future. And many times these products fail miserably because they're not fun to use, right? That these products that we admire that are so habit forming, like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, these products are habit forming because they're fun to use, they're engaging. And so many times these habits don't stick because fundamentally the user doesn't like to do these behaviors. So that's the big challenge, is figuring out ways to make these behaviors that people want to do. How do we make those behaviors things that they actually enjoy doing?
You studied psychology? What did you study?
Right. So I went to graduate school of business at Stanford, and I've taught the Using Neuroscience to Influence Human Behavior class there.
All right. When I talk about you immigrated to the United States, and you were talking about like feeling different or feeling strange because of your name. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's something that I had growing up. I was born in Israel and moved to the United States when I was 3 years old. And I came with this crazy name that kind of made me an outsider. But in a way, I think it benefited me because there's something to being not from the United States, that you have kind of a different perspective here that I think actually made me more resilient. And now the name benefits me because people remember my name. When I say the name of my blog is Near and Far, and Near is spelled like my first name, Nir. It's a way for people to remember me more. So I don't regret it.
Can you take us through your daily routine, like from when you wake up until you sleep, what you do?
Sure. It's pretty simple and not very exciting. I will say that my routine goes out the window when I'm traveling and when I'm speaking. I'm on the road at least 50 days a year doing speaking engagements or consulting. So on a normal day when I'm home, I wake up around 6:30. I have breakfast with my family. Usually I eat a lot of protein in the mornings. Then I'll do writing. The first thing I do in the morning. Oh no, I'll meditate. I've moved my morning meditation to the first thing I do. I'll take 10 minutes and do a focused meditation. And that's of course to build. That's another one of these techniques that we can use to build willpower, to build focus, is to build that kind of muscle that we have to sustain our attention. Then I'll do some writing. That's the hardest thing I do every day, is to write. It's the most difficult thing, but it's also the thing I find most rewarding, most enjoyable. So I'll write from between 7:30 to 9:30. Then at 9:30 I'll do some kind of athletic activity. Either I'll go for a run, or I'll go to the gym, or I'll do 100 push-ups. And then after that I'll come back, take a shower. Then I'll do some more writing. Then after about another hour of writing, I'll check email if I still have time. And then I'll have lunch. And then the rest of the afternoon I do consulting. So I'll either take phone calls, I'll do podcasts, I'll do something that I'm working with other people trying to stays on this topic of habit formation and the psychology of product design. And then that'll be my day up until around 6 o'clock, where I'll have dinner with my family if I'm not doing some kind of speaking engagement. And after that, I'll return to email. I try and check email only twice a day in the afternoon, or right before lunch and in the evening. And then that'll be it for the day.
How to regain control over emails?
That's a good question. It's a question that I think a lot of people struggle with, how to gain control over email. It's something that I still struggle with. And it goes back to what we talked about before around breaking the hook. in different ways. And so whether it's removing those triggers, making email more difficult to use, scheduling email during only certain parts of the day. I found that email is something that I can do that doesn't require a ton of cognitive thought. That I can kind of do email. It doesn't require a lot of willpower to do email, so I try and push it off and to do that last thing in the day. So I try and do that in the evening as opposed to letting it, check it 100 times a day. I only try and check it twice per day. Don't always succeed at that, but that's what I try and do. And that's a few of the techniques that I use.
Where do you see the future of the web based on the people habits and what they like and what they are having fun with?
I think that the web is going to continue to become a more habit-forming, unfortunately perhaps more addictive place. And that's something that I think we should be aware of, that people who have tendencies to become addicted are at greater risk, I think, because of how habit-forming the web has become and how potentially addictive it has become. I think the confluence of information transferred at higher speeds with more data being transferred and then greater accessibility, so data, access, and speed, these three things combine to send people through these hooks at a faster rate. And so I think that's something that we have to be careful about, that if we are not conscious of how these products change our behaviors, we are susceptible to manipulation. And so that's a big part of why I teach what I do, is because I want people to realize that these products are not built this way by accident. It's not, it didn't just happen. It's by design that these products are built to be so engaging. And so what I'm hoping to do is to use some of this habit-forming potential of the web to help people live happier, healthier, more productive, more connected lives by using habits for good. I mean, the reality is that I'm guessing that people listening to us right now that are building products, that want to build services that improve people's lives, their problem is not that their product is too engaging or that it's addictive. That's not their problem. Their problem is that they're building something that probably very few people care about and they wish more people would use. And so that's really who I want to reach out to by making this book, is that it shouldn't just be gaming and advertising that use these techniques. It should be all sorts of companies that try and help people live better lives by using the psychology of consumer behavior.
What are some of the strange habits that you found in Silicon Valley?
Well, I wrote an article called "The Strange Sex Habits of Silicon Valley," which was all about how many of us here in Silicon Valley, and it's not a Silicon Valley problem anymore. Now it's a problem that occurs all over the world. That many of us find us using our cell phones when we should be with each other, right? So I found that in my own life, I was on my cell phone and my wife was on her iPad, instead of being intimate with each other. And so that was an article that I wrote to kind of highlight some of the techniques we've just talked about that we can use to regain control. That it wasn't benefiting me, it wasn't helping my life that I was on the web so much, that instead I wanted to get back some space in my life so that I could have a relationship with my wife. So one thing I did was that we bought an internet timer that we plug into the wall, and that every night at 10 p.m. that timer shuts off, and it turns off our internet in our house. It shuts off our router. So that's an easy way to remove those triggers, to make the action more difficult, and to break the hook that isn't serving us in that case.
How did you start, planning for the book? You started blogging at the beginning, and then you combined some of the articles or the blog post into a book, or what's your structure when you write currently?
Right.
Like you do you write blog posts and then you put them into a book, or you write a book and then you publish them as a blog post? What's your strategy for content?
I start with blogging. So I like to put everything I'm thinking out there, and any new piece of research that I think is interesting, I like to put out on the web. And then after about 2.5 years of that, I teamed up with a guy by the name of Ryan Hoover, who reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to help you. How can I help?" And I said, "You know what? Take my blog posts and help me put them together. Can you edit them together into a book?" And so he kind of put them into a Google Doc and We kind of made it into a structured book as opposed to a bunch of disparate posts. And then,
He's an
that became the
editor?
book. Yes, right.
He has like a company to market as well, or just to edit?
No. He's actually gone off to do a new company called Producthunt, and so he just liked my material. He was just a talented guy that I really like, and we became good friends. And he helped me with editing the book.
And now, currently, when you write, also the same thing. You write blog posts, and then in the future, maybe you make it as a book, or
Right.
you change your technique.
Right, I still do that. So I publish to my blog, and so many of the articles don't go anywhere, won't become a book. But then after a while, you see if something maintains my interest, and I constantly keep writing about it, and it's a consistent theme. Well, then that's a good sign. It's a book. It has potential to be a book. I remember reading somewhere that if you don't find what you're writing interesting, then your readers won't either. So I like to kind of test out these ideas, and if I can't get it off my mind, if it's something that I keep coming back to, if it's something that I keep struggling with, that I keep thinking about, then that means it's a bigger idea that should be in a book.
Why you see yourself far from startups and starting a new company, or you like this life of writing and consulting and speaking more?
Yeah, it's something I struggle with because on one hand, I oftentimes itch to go back to developing a product. There's so much that can be done. There's so much good that can be done by building a product or service that touches the lives of hopefully millions of people. And so I do miss that. I kind of get that itch scratched because I do so much consulting, and I can see lots of different startups at the same time and kind of watch their growth, which is really fun and very enriching, personally enriching, and so I really enjoy that process. But lately, I just have so many things that interest me. I have so many things that I want to learn more about, so many questions that I want answered, and so that's really why I keep writing. It's I think people have this perception that authors they write what they know, as opposed to what I do is that I write what I want to know. And so that's what drives me is this, it's got a hook in itself in that, I come up with a question that's interesting, something that's on my mind that I want the answer to, and I just start digging into it. And if that sustains my interest and I want to know more and I keep writing about it and I publish it and people think it's interesting too, then that kind of encourages me to keep going.
How did you find the process from writing the book into talking maybe to publisher or self-publishing it? And would you, if you have both choices, which one would you choose, publishing or self-publishing?
So I did both. So I sold a couple of companies, and I wasn't, when I was writing, I didn't have this goal of becoming a professional writer. I originally, decided to make this book thinking I would give it to my blog readers, and in fact, I gave it out for free to many blog readers at first, just because I thought, how many people would want to read it? But then when I saw it started getting good reviews, that kind of gave me some more encouragement. I actually took it down and made revisions to actually, make it a book I was proud of, and made it better, made version 2.0, put the book back up as an ebook, and then started selling the book for I think $9.95 or something. I can't remember what it was sold for. And then it started doing even better, and I thought, well, people started asking, why can't we get a physical book? So then I put it up as a physical book. And the beauty of today's technology is that all this can be done on demand, right? It's so easy today to publish a book. You don't need to go to a publishing house. Now, the kicker was that once I published this book, that I just published myself, and I didn't have any professional editor. I asked my blog readers to help me edit it, and I had Ryan Hoover help me as well, but he's just a buddy. He wasn't a professional editor. But then after I put the book up for sale, it got so many good reviews that actually it got the attention of Portfolio, which is a division of Random House. And they ended up buying the book rights. And so that was kind of a great win-win, because they could now take the book to places that I couldn't, right? They could get into bookstores, they could help me with international distribution. And so that was a win-win. And I think that's a great model. It certainly was something I've been very happy with.
So next time you would go with a traditional publisher, you will not self-publish?
I don't know. I'm not sure, because the fact that Hooked had such a good reception was kind of a surprise. And to be honest, I don't know if I could do it again. Maybe the next book I write will be crap. I'd rather know about that early right? I'm a big proponent of lean development, lean processes, and so I'd rather put that out there and see if it's any good before wasting all the time and effort going through a traditional publishing route. The traditional publishing route, you put out a book, you've got this 1 week of the book launch to make a big splash, and then that's kind of it. Whereas with the self-published book, I put it out there, I saw what people thought of it, I changed parts of it, I had a lot more flexibility once the book was out there, as opposed to doing with a big publisher. Once you hit print, at the big publishing houses, it's kind of it. You can't really make too many more changes. And so I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. I might do it again.
When you give them the rights, you cannot, it's for how many years in the contract, or until you just buy it back from them?
I think it's forever. I mean, you can buy it back, but I think it's, I don't know, I think it's like 99 years or something.
What else you use to market for the books?
Not much. I didn't do any kind of heavy-duty viral anything. I mean, we did a few ads, right? We tried different ad formats. Across the board, they were pretty awful. Nothing really worked in terms of Facebook ads or Google ads or Twitter ads. None of them really worked very well. What worked well was writing good stuff, that at the end of the day...
But your branding is great. The website, the videos, the clips, the branding, it's really clean and very nice.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I wish I could say it was very strategic and very well thought out. I don't.
You have a good taste.
Thank you. Seriously, the best piece of advice, if you're somebody who wants to write, the best piece of advice is to write what you think is interesting, to write for yourself, and you have to enjoy it. If it's not something that you enjoy doing every day, then you won't keep doing it, right? It'll become a job, it'll become a drag for you, and then you're not going to want to keep doing it. So in anything in life, we have to find those things that we either love, or we have to train ourselves to love it. It's not that just because you don't love it at first, you can never love it, but we have to figure out ways to enjoy the process, to enjoy sometimes the pain. Writing is very difficult. It doesn't come easily to me at all. So I've had to figure out ways to enjoy that process, to get satisfaction from the daily practice, as opposed to just, I want to write a book so that I can, make a lot of money. That's a stupid reason to write a book.
What other, in the daily life, what other tools or techniques that you use that makes you more efficient?
What makes me more efficient? Right now I'm struggling with things that make me less efficient. I'm trying to figure out how to use less technology in parts that don't make me efficient. I'm trying to figure out ways to outsource things. I mean, and there are some technologies that I think are making me more efficient. Like, for example, I started using this app called Fancy Hands that you can...
I do use it. It's very good.
You use Fancy Hands. Yeah, it's great. There's also this app called Native that just came out that's helps you with travel planning, where it's kind of like Fancy Hands, but only for travel planning. So that's very effective. I really like Native. I love it. And so those are a few of the things recently that I really enjoyed using.
What's the marketing strategy that helped you the most to sell your products?
I don't really have products other than my book. That's it. I don't do... Oh, I do a course. I do an online course, but it's kind of hard to find.
So is that the book help you the most, let's say, with the speaking engagements, or you market for yourself as a speaker in different ways, or the blog, or...
No, I don't do any outbound anything. I don't solicit. I have a speakers bureau who does some of that for me, but the vast majority of my speaking engagements come from people who found the book, who enjoyed it, who want me to speak to their company, and that's about it. And now I kind of limit myself. I mean, it's a great problem to have, but what I really enjoy, what really brings me the most satisfaction, is writing. And so I'm kind of struggling now with I don't want to do too much speaking. I want to stick to making new content, and that's a problem that a lot of people face. When you start doing stuff you really enjoy, people take notice and people like what you're making, and then they want you to do other stuff that's not the stuff you originally enjoyed. And so I think it's really important to focus on what's essential. My friend Greg McEwen wrote this book, Essentialism, which is all about how successful people get dragged into doing things that didn't make them successful. So it's very important to maintain this practice of doing the things that you really enjoy doing.
For people in the audience who want to work with you, how much you charge for one-on-one or like for consulting?
Well, I've never been asked my hourly rates, but they can contact me. I actually give away time for free to anybody who wants to talk. If you go to my blog, it says in the top right corner, schedule time with me, and I make an hour a week in 15-minute increments. So anybody who wants to talk to me, who have read the book, if you have a specific question, I'm happy to reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about a specific question. That's my pleasure to do that. But then if it's something that requires more time, if it requires hours of consulting, then we can talk. You can email me.
Which company or product or service made you most of your money? Or made you the most of money? Amount of money?
Which product or service? My companies that we sold.
But still, the writing and the book is more enjoyable, right?
It's more enjoyable, right? That's more enjoyable. It's what I'd like to do now. But also, to be honest, it's because
it's addictive. When you see the fans, it's very addictive.
It is a little
this
addictive,
online marketing thing is very also addictive.
Right. What do you do? What have you found brings you the most success and the most happiness?
The same thing. I feel myself like I enjoy the most. Imagine myself that if I go and work for companies, I make much more money. And I still have companies, but I try to automate all work on, by itself. I try to build structures or business that works without me while I'm sitting home. But if I go work with companies, I make much more money. But I imagine myself building these automated companies that works without me involved operationally, and just write and write books and enjoy publishing those books and blogging. Same thing. It's very addictive. However, when you think about it, it's not that much. I think it's because part of it builds your legacy, and that's the value in that, and adding value to other people. The joy that brings with it is much bigger than the money.
Right. No, I definitely see that. When you can show that you've learned something about a topic and that other people find that valuable. It takes years. It takes a long time, at least, to write something that I think is quality. And then when you can see that on the shelf, yesterday actually it was funny. I had I ordered some takeout, and the driver pulled up to my apartment building. And he said, "I saw your name. Look what I'm reading." He said, "I'm reading your book." So, the driver, everybody here in San Francisco is starting a company. Everybody's starting a tech company. So it was really cool to see that that the book gets out there and has an impact.
Actually, now I'm working with a power company as a consultant for 8 hours a week. So after 2.5 months working with them, now today actually the CEO sat with me, and he's the chairman or the owner. He asked me to be the CEO of the company.
Wow.
But on my, terms, to be, work whenever I want, and, go, let's say 4 days a week. And I'm still struggling with that because I just finished writing a book called The Transition from Employee to Efficient Entrepreneur by this automation and these stuff. So I'm just kind of, if I say yes, kind of contradicting myself, or because the guy is flexible that, again, I work on my terms, still struggling with, taking a decision.
Can you automate that? Can you put somebody, good?
He's flexible, and you want to partner in other projects. So I can, after you build the structure of the company, that you kind of, not be there all the time. Even now, as a consultant, that he wanted me to be full-time, I just go from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. so I can sleep and wake up in the morning, let's say, right? So he's flexible because he's kind of also entrepreneurial, and he care about the results more than, being there or...
Right. What's your favorite productivity hacks?
I use Asana a lot, and example, this company, I changed the entire communication system into Asana, because you can use it as an email, and you can just tasks and projects. I use Evernote for notes a lot. For emails, I came up with a system that I check my emails through WhatsApp. When I automated all these companies, it was taking me 8 to 10 hours to just reply emails, because all the pressure became on my inbox. So I came up with a system to have, let's say, a VA, and she have an access to all my emails, and then she reads the emails, and she sends, let's say, email number 1 and the day and the subject as a text on my WhatsApp account. And then she speaks the email to me, and I answer in the same way, number 1, and I speak the reply. So she writes the formalities like dear and regards and to the people. So by that, it will hack most 90% of the time. So spending instead of 10 hours, you spend like maybe 45 minutes or less, because she will reply formally, and also she will add to your calendar when you want the things. She will forward to the right team.
And are you using Fancy Hands for that? Who do you use for that?
No, I use a VA. The Fancy Hands doesn't. You can automate with that with Fancy Hand, but it doesn't really work that much because they use a different VA for each task. So you need someone who knows your stuff.
So you have a dedicated person.
Yeah, just in the US actually.
In the US?
Yeah, and I'm in Dubai. Even I'm thinking actually to make this as a startup. Like example, you make a call center of 2 or 3 people. You start small, and you make it as a service that you can, let's say, check for people via voice. Thinking about it still, I don't know. And the other thing that I've done, I shifted all the emails with my team into Asana. So the email will stay only for the foreign emails that this lady will check, the VA will check. Because so when you go to Asana, you know what you're gonna see. It's not like strange stuff. You keep the emails for the non-urgent stuff or the foreign stuff. But that
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so this is how I do it.
Yeah, I think Asana and Slack have done an amazing job of reducing those distractions from all the other stuff that comes into our email box, so that it's just work. It's just that stuff that's super important to work on, that there's no reason to check email when you should only be in Slack or Asana for that day.
Right. Who's your top 3 mentors?
Top 3 mentors. I don't know. I don't have any formal
Google.
That's the thing. It's amazing today that everything is out there already. There's just so much great content. There's so many academics out there that have done so much great research, and now it's all at our fingertips. It really is all accessible by Google. So when it's amazing how when you want to talk to somebody who's made some huge impact, you just email them, right? They're all accessible these days, which is pretty amazing.
Other hobbies.
Other hobbies. I'm lucky enough to make my principal hobby my profession now. That if a vacation to me, a real vacation, is not traveling to some beach. It's not some kind of exotic resort. For me, a vacation is, let me write. Let me leave me alone for a few hours and let me think for a while, so I can see if I can come up with anything interesting that helps people improve their lives.
What's amazing about authors or smart people, they figure out what they really like or want. So many people, until their 60s, they don't know really what makes them really happy, and then they start regretting the things.
Right.
So I see that really when you know what you want, like writing and these things, really it changes your perspective of what you want to enjoy.
Yeah. But I will say though that I don't know if I buy the advice of do what you love, because I love writing, but I don't always love writing. It's hard. It's really hard. But there's something so. I've learned over time to enjoy the struggle. So it's almost like running. So I used to hate running.
But don't you think there is a long-term reward in that? What makes you run after that? Or?
No. I never run races. I never want to run a race. It's not my thing. But what I wanted to do, I always set this goal of running races, right? Like I want to make this much money. I want to do this much distance. I want to sell this many whatevers. And then I said, screw that. I don't want to do that anymore. What I want to do is to figure out a way to enjoy the process, right? So I don't want to get to a goal with running. I want to run for the rest of my life. I want to enjoy the running. That's the only goal. How do I enjoy the running? And so I had to teach myself. I have to find these techniques to bring awareness, for example, to my body as I'm running. So my technique is that I like to feel the wind on my face, right? So that's the thing I turn to when I'm running, doing something that's difficult, that's not always fun. I turn to that mindful practice. Or if it hurts, I stop, right? Like there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, let me go back to a behavior I enjoy, which is walking. Walking isn't painful. And so when I was learning to run, to enjoy running, I would go back to what I call my minimum enjoyable action, which was just to walk. Same with writing. right? The hard work of, oh, I gotta meet my quota. I have to write 500 words today or 1,000 words today, and I have to put out this book by this deadline. That's not for me. Instead, what I do is my job. The only thing I have to do is to sit in my chair and think for 2 hours. Right? That's all I have to do. I have to show up and I have to think for 2 hours, and I inevitably start writing. Right? I just write my thoughts. And over time, those thoughts become paragraphs, and the paragraphs become essays, and the essays become blog posts, and the blog posts become a book.
When you're depressed, what do? You walk, or you have a different technique to change your mood?
When I'm depressed, I haven't meditated for long, but I think meditation, there's something there. I've tried many times to adopt this habit of meditation, and it's been very difficult for me. But recently I've gotten more into it, and I find that it does improve my mood substantially. It helps me fall asleep better. I sleep much better when I meditate, and so that's really helped me. But more than anything, what helps me when I'm in a bad mood, when I'm depressed, is a good conversation with someone I love, and that's primarily my wife.
Biggest failure moment in your life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, you ask hard questions. These are tough.
That's what makes it different.
These are different. Biggest failure. I think the biggest failure in my life was that I started companies because I wanted to make money. And I think that's a mistake. That starting a company because you want to make a bunch of money is not a good reason to start a company. One, your odds of failure are huge. So, if you take the expected value of starting a business, you're much better off just working a job, because you're going to make more money at the job, because proportionally most businesses fail. And second, even if you win, right, even if you make money, if it wasn't something meaningful, if it wasn't something important, if it wasn't something that you felt added to the lives of others, then it's not something you're really proud of. I'm proud of the relationships I built with my business partners, with my colleagues. I'm proud of the employees we had, but I can't really say that the companies I started that I loved what they did. Unfortunately, I did them because I saw an opportunity, and so I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to do something just because of the money. It's a really bad reason.
What's the best advice that you have ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. I think that it's been said many times, but to keep things in perspective, that I remember when I was raising money for my last company, and we raised money from Kleiner Perkins, which is kind of this well-known venture capital firm that has funded many successful companies here in Silicon Valley, and I was very nervous. Right, I was as a first-time entrepreneur, I was very nervous about raising money for my company, because one, we needed the money, but also this was this big prestigious firm. And then I remember thinking about it, and I had an executive coach at the time, and he told me something. He said something like, "Do you remember your prom? Prom is this thing we do in the United States in high school. Before you graduate from high school, everybody has a big dance." And
you have a date.
You have a date, and you have to get dressed up, and it's a big deal, and everybody stresses out over, how are they going to get there, and who are they going to go with, and what are they going to do afterwards, and it's a very stressful thing for a lot of people. And I remember being stressed out about it, and he said, you remember that prom? Remember what a big deal that was? Is that a big deal now? I said, no, of course it's not. It was nothing. It meant nothing, and that's everything is prom. Right? This meeting, my big meeting with Kleiner Perkins, I was meeting John Doerr. Oh my God, John Doerr, he's such a big deal. Everybody knows this legend. It's just prom, It's
For
just another
moment.
day that in the big picture of things, life goes on. The world, the planet has been here for 4 billion years. It's gonna, there are 7 billion people in the world. Our little problems, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. That life just goes on, and nothing is that big of a deal. So relax.
What would you advise your younger self if you have the chance?
I think it would be that to not take things so seriously. That I think I took life way too seriously for way too long. And really, doing the things that I'm most proud of, that I think will be my legacy, are the things that I did with love, things that I did when I wasn't so worried about the outcomes, and instead things that I wanted to do because of the day-to-day practice. That you can do anything as long as you do it consistently for a long period of time. You get better and better, and that's how you make an impact.
Top 3 favorite books.
Top 3 favorite books. Wow, I have to look at my shelf.
Do you read books or you listen to books?
I do. I started listening to books recently.
That's another hack that I use. Like when I used to read books, it took me 6 months. Now, when I listen to books in the car through Audible, I finish 2 to 3 books a week.
2 to 3 books a week, so you drive a lot.
The book average length is 4 hours, so average people drive from 2 to 3 hours a day easy. I drive like maybe 1.5 hours to 2 hours. I just go play squash and go to clients or.
Do you listen on fast? Do you do it on double time?
I try to do 1.25, but then I said, why the rush? I'll just listen to it the way it is.
That's good. Did you listen to Hooked or did you read Hooked?
Not yet, but it's on the wish list.
Oh, okay.
It's on the waiting list.
Tell me what you think of the audio. I'd love to know what you heard. I don't narrate it. We hired
this is another thing that I don't like read books if it's not on Audible. So
is that right?
So it has to be on Audible in order to. I mean, I buy a book.
Yeah, I do.
I will listen to it and I will send you I think it's a great book. That I saw reviews is amazing about it.
Thank you. No, I'd love to hear what you think about it. So I could tell you a book I recently read that I think was an important book. It was called Addiction by Design by Natasha Dow Schul, and not many people read it. It's a book that looks at the gambling industry and specifically the machine gambling industry and talks about the psychology of how these gambling machines work. And I think that book had a pretty profound impact on me because I could see how these same techniques that are used in Las Vegas and in casinos are used online. And so that book had a pretty substantial influence on me.
Anyone in Las Vegas hired you in a casino to
No,
ask you for your idea how to develop,
I won't work with them, actually. There's 2 types of businesses I won't work with. I won't work with casinos, I will work with casinos if they're asking me how to break habits, right? So if they're asking me about how do we use this responsibly. So I had a client actually in Europe who is a gambling company that's highly regulated by the government. And so they called me in to say, okay, you're an expert in habits. How do we break these addictions? What's an ethical way to help people out of those addictions? So that's the exception I'll make. But I won't help gaming companies, and I won't help casinos, and I won't help pornography.
However, you were in the gaming industry, but now you are against it.
That's why I won't help them because I know how they work.
So another 2 books.
Another 2 books. I have to think about it. I can't think of off the top of my mind the books that had the biggest impact.
Top 3 favorite apps. Or top 3 most used app on your smartphone.
Top 3 most used apps. So I'm looking at my phone right now. Twitter. I use Twitter a ton. I use Gmail more than I should admit. I love Pocket. I love an app called Lizgo. Lizgo reads. You'll like this, actually. So I send articles to Pocket. Do you use Pocket?
No, but I use Evernote. People told me it's almost the same, but I use Evernote.
Yeah, you save articles, but so Lizgo will read those articles to you with like a Siri type voice. So when I'm in the gym or I'm taking my phone in the car, I can listen to articles. I love that app. That's 4.
Do you listen to any music when you work?
Yes, I do. Actually, I use an app called Focus at Work. It's Focus with the ampersand work. And that's an app actually that it has the best type of music that I like to write to, which is it has classical, it has techno, it has dubstep, it has all that music. But the important part is it has no words, so I don't get distracted with the words. I can just hear the beats.
What makes you really happy?
What makes me happy is moments of awe. When I can learn something that helps me see the world differently. When I say, "Wow, I didn't see the world that way before," that makes me really happy. And that's kind of what when somebody writes a review about my book, or somebody tells me that my book helped them see the world differently, that's the biggest compliment I can get. That moment of, oh, I didn't know the world worked that way before. That makes me really happy.
Is there any question that you wanted me to ask you and I didn't ask you, that, or a subject that you wanted to talk about?
No, but you asked me a lot of questions I didn't want to be asked.
Last question, how people can contact you?
Sure. So my blog is nirandfar.com. It's spelled like my first name, Nir, and far.com. I'm on Twitter at nirayal.com, and the book is Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products, and it's available wherever books are sold.
Thank you so much, Nir. Really enjoyed the interview. It's one of my favorite ever interviews. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, everyone. Be efficient and stay efficient, and see you soon with another leading expert.